Well, here in America, more parents are looking for an alternative to public schools. And Lee Webb found one in Moscow, Idaho. Watch.
At first glance, Logos School looks like any other school. Hallways, lockers, and students heading to class. It's in those classes where a difference can be seen and heard.
Salvete.
Those are Logos third graders greeting teacher Julie Garfield in Latin.
Okay, let's start with chants. You ready? Amo, amas.
By the time these students are in the 10th grade, they'll be able to converse and read original works in the ancient language. Douglas Wilson was the leader in founding Logos.
At the beginning, all I knew is I didn't want my kids to have what I got. I felt ripped off vaguely. And we were trying to impart the kind of education that none of us had received.
Wilson had discovered this essay, The Lost Tools of Learning, written by British author Dorothy Sayers in the late 40s. Sayers wrote, "Although we often succeed in teaching our pupils subjects, we fail lamentably on the whole in teaching them how to think." That shift, in this country at least, began in the mid-1800s when the focus of education became preparing young people for specific jobs. Schools today place a premium on computer training, while only 31% of college graduates are able to understand lengthy passages from books. Sayers argued for a return to an educational method that had been used for centuries, a method that employed what was known as the trivium: grammar, logic, and rhetoric, each phase designed to take advantage of learning characteristics as children grow and mature. Wilson embraced Sayers' ideas, and in 1981, Logos opened its doors with 16 students.
And as we implemented it, we discovered that she was really onto something. It really worked in a spectacular way.
Subject, verb, complete sense.
Tom Garfield was the school's first principal. 25 years and 230 graduates later, he's still leading Logos and touting the classical method.
Good morning, second graders.
Good morning, Mr. Garfield.
The trivium begins with the grammar stage. Children K through 6, Garfield says, are good at memorizing, and singing and chanting is one of the ways they learn just the facts about math, history, and language.
Rote learning is almost a bad term in many cases. The idea that children should just memorize something without having a complete concept of it. Well, we submit that they won't get a complete concept of it until they're much older and more mature.
And to make it more fun, they even play games like this one to learn their Latin vocabulary. But why teach a language long considered dead?
The reason that I teach Latin is because it teaches students how to think in a detailed way. I also like the way it self-consciously reinforces their English grammar.
That's because much of the English language is derived from Latin. By the 8th grade, they're ready to move on to the logic phase.
If one of the statements is true, the other one must be false.
They see the connections, they want to find out fallacies, they want to catch people out, and they love engaging in that kind of back and forth.
In other words, they learn how to reason and argue. By high school, they're studying rhetoric and learning how to convey all they've learned persuasively. 92% of Logos graduates go on to college. Many of them go no further than a couple of miles away to New St. Andrews, the classical Christian college also co-founded by Wilson. Greek is added to the mix of foreign languages taught here. Even the math is based on the classical method developed by Euclid, the founder of geometry. The professors make no apologies for the heavy workload. That's sophomore Sarah Halverson standing next to all the books New St. Andrews students are required to read in their freshman year. A total of 85 books with an emphasis on the classics of Western civilization. New St. Andrews students are given at least 16 oral exams over a 4-year span. And before they graduate, they're required to write and defend an 80-page thesis, all of which prompts critics to say that the classical approach is only for the best and brightest.
We're a small town in northern Idaho. We've been accepting average kids of average American families and seeing what the kids can do.
And apparently they're doing well. Logos has had 25 National Merit semifinalists, per capita the highest in Idaho. And its students score 35% higher than the national average on year-end achievement tests. Word of that success has spread. Wilson wrote a book called Recovering the Lost Tools of Learning. Now there are 160 schools here and abroad based on the classical model.
Daniel J. Apple.
A New St. Andrews alum was the Regent University Law School's distinguished graduate in 2004. But critics also wonder how a classical education trains students for the real world. Shel Christofferson, who owns an economic forecasting company, was one of those critics.
Shel came to me and he said, Roy, I wish you would teach these kids something useful like economics or computer modeling, something like that. Give them some practical skills so I can hire them.
School President Roy Atwood challenged Christofferson to hire just one new St. Andrews graduate. Now 12 of his 18 employees are from the college, and Christofferson is one of classical education's biggest advocates.
I have actually never seen anybody that can move up on the learning curve as fast as these kids have.
But filling the workforce isn't the focus at Logos or New St. Andrews. It's equipping young Christians to be lifelong learners who think critically.
I can read a book, pick up a book and read it and pull things from it and be able to explain something that I pulled from it or something that I came to understand through it and then apply it to other areas of life.
They will know what it means to be a Christian, to have an identity that goes down to the very bones, that everything they do and think is going to, in a sense, be biblically grounded and Christianly oriented.
And capable, Atwood says, of engaging an unbelieving world with a credible profession of the gospel.
How do you know this is working?
You measure success by faithfulness to God. Does the next generation want to carry on in a covenantal faithfulness? Do they want to do it again?
Wilson says the answer to that question overwhelmingly is yes. Amen. Lee Webb, CBN News, Moscow, Idaho.
What an incredible experience. And you know, Terry, proficiency in language is one of the most important indicia of advanced thinking, you know,
well, and
vocabulary.
When they talk about how much further ahead of the average American student they are, you know, I've often, when my children were in a principal approach school for a long time, and we'd go back and read some of John Adams' writings, and so far beyond. Now, these were people who had to walk miles just to get a book, you know, and yet learning was a different process then.
And reasoning and debating. But, you know, the knowledge of Latin is extraordinarily helpful in learning English, and the same thing with Greek. Whatever language we've got is pretty much either going to come from Latin roots or from Greek roots. Much of the scientific material has Greek origins, and much of the other language we have is Latin. But as far as learning the New Testament, for example, to be able to read it in the original language, the old folks could do it. The pioneers of this nation, they could read the Bible in the original languages.
Well, even Latin used to be available to everyone years ago.
Yeah.
It was just a part of the curriculum.
Well, in any event, I congratulate them on the fact that the distinguished graduate from Regent Law School was a graduate of this New St. Andrews. That says a lot about it, but I congratulate them. I think that's a wonderful thing, and would that we could get back to more of this classical learning and teach people how to reason.